is going to be a benefit to our farmers, but also to the people as well. You can wear it, and it makes fantastic paper. And the seeds that come from it, you can create an oil that is better than 23% protein, contains all of the amino acids that rebuild the human immune system, and as well as the omega 369 oils that everybody, all the cardiologists want you to have so that you have a healthy circulatory system. It also contains a strain called omega 4. And omega 4 has been shown to have positive effects on cancerous tumors, on many different disorders that are mental related. And the big holdup that we're having right now is we have bills in committee, one for industrial hemp, and our legislators aren't getting on the ball and passing this. My local legislator, I talk to him about this often, and he always goes back to the Jerusalem artichoke bit. And Wisconsin farmers got on that bandwagon really quick, and they didn't have any processing plants for it. So they wound up with a bunch of rotting product that they could not move. That would not be true with hemp. And I pushed it especially hard for my county because I moved out of the Fox cities. I used to live in Lima, Manhattan, Appleton here for 26 years, and then almost 20 years ago, I moved out to Forest Junction, thinking that being on the other side of the cliff, I would be in a less polluted zone. And I found out that I moved to the second worst polluting county in the state. And it came from a herbicide called acrolein. And in our county, we are 10 to the 43rd power over the safe limit for acrolein. And acrolein causes not only cancer, but it causes deformations in embryos, circulatory, neurological, and muscular deformations. And basically, it's a very bad product. And if we were to move to use hemp in our county, and quite a lot of Calumet County could actually grow hemp. There's only a few small places that can, which would be like marshlands. And there you want to grow sawgrass for biofuel. But with cannabis hemp, you sow it into the ground, 100 seeds to a square foot. And it can be, the fibers out of it can be pulled out in the field. The cellulose is there. If it's not used to be for making paper, you can let it go right back into the soil, and you don't have to put anything other than manure on the soil to make it viable growing property, and it will stay that way with sustained crop yields for better than 20 years. Now, the information for that comes from a study done by the University of Kentucky back in the late 20s when hemp was actually used quite a lot. And the rub that I get from my state representative is that, oh, there's no recent studies on that. And my comeback to him has always been, well, throughout history, 1 and 1 is always equal to, and nobody's ever re-questioned that. But they want to drag their feet because they don't want to be seen as supporting something that has such a negative stereotype to it. And I can kind of understand that, but when you're talking about a product that has the potential just in the industrial market to create $70 billion a year in income, when you can take a guy who has a small 20-acre farm and he can make enough to support his family off of that and doesn't need to have a lot of farm machinery in order to sow it, he can walk to a yard, toss seeds around, and be just as effective as somebody that uses a seed planter. You have the ability for people to actually make money and have a good living without having to worry about maintaining large machinery operations. The biggest problem with the Jerusalem artichoke was they had no processing plants. Here in Wisconsin, Appleton Papers, being one of them, has said that if we can supply them with 10 tons a day worth of cellulose to make pulp out of, that they'd be glad to convert, and they can convert to making hemp paper in as little as 3 weeks. We can get Tony on board with that and make them stop making pulp out of wood and get that wonderful smell that comes out of the air from them, get rid of that. And while we're waiting on these plants to be built, which would constitute, to my mind, a tremendous jobs program, because typically called, when you're using the cellulose to create pulp for paper and strip the fibers from the plant. While those jobs are being created, and everything from scientists to day laborers to construction workers to the folks that own the shops out on Main Street that would be selling clothing. And clothing, as I said, you can make anything from workwear to the finest of wedding dresses. Some of the finest lace in the world is made from Irish hemp. And the same thing can be done here. And while we are waiting on these plants to be built, which need to be built within 50 miles of the growing fields, that means we'd have widespread plants being built across the state of Wisconsin. But the farmers are also going to be able to make money by not having to dump tons of fertilizer on the field, not having to dump tons of herbicide on the field, because hemp has a very dense root base and it cancels out a lot of plants that would ordinarily grow in there. But you can strip the cordage from the plant in the field, put the cellulose back into the field, and it will re-energize it with the nitrogen, so that no longer has to be put in, saving farmers tons of money, depending on the size of their farm, and the seed products that come from it. The oil that you get from the seeds, as I've said, is high in omega 3, 6, 9, and 4, and it's also 23% protein. An oil made from this, I know a gentleman down in Berlin that he was diagnosed with colon cancer, as well as being moderately obese. He was 60-some pounds overweight. And what he started doing was making his own oil from his own plants that he grew. And after a year of drinking a cup of this oil every day, he shed better than 60 pounds, got his LDL cholesterol levels and his triglyceride levels down to that of a young child that hasn't had a lifetime full of clogged arteries from eating bad food. And he was able to not only shed that weight, but his neuromuscular ailment, which, if I memory serves me correct, was fibromyalgia, he reached down and grabbed the back of his heel and pulled it up to his hip and stood there. I couldn't do that when I could walk. And I was amazed, and what really amazed me about it was the man was 71 and he looked like he was 51. And I was 55, and I think I look like I'm 70. But the seeds you can also grow into sprouts. And put them on sandwiches, put them in salads, the same thing. And what you wind up doing is making the benefits that are in that seed 20 times greater, so just because you sprouted it out. And a diet on that, you're not only going to be able to lose weight safely, but you're going to be able to give yourself a superfood that not only cleans out your arteries, cleans out the triglycerides in your system, but you're going to be giving yourself something that's got a better protein content than a steak. And most of us that have been in the vegetarian world for a while know that red meat sits inside your system for a long, long time. And getting people off of the red meat diet and onto one that's high in hemp seed products, especially the sprouts, we're going to wind up creating a healthier society, because any person that didn't fall asleep through 8th grade science class will be able to tell you that when you have an immune system that's functioning at nearly peak proficiency, you don't need a doctor. You're not going to get sick. You're not going to get these seasonal flus that comes by. You're not going to be plagued with all these little ailments that people get, because you're going to have an immune system that fights off this stuff. It'll fight off the cancers. It'll fight off the bronchitises that come by. And that has been a big thing with the industrial movement. People counter that there's going to be hordes of teenagers and other people rushing into the fields to smoke this stuff. And you'd have to smoke a quarter of an acre of industrial hemp to even catch anything more than a headache. And your chances of getting bronchitis are a lot better than it is in catching a buzz off of this stuff. So, that kind of canned that argument, but the mystique, a misgiven mystique to marijuana has been that it's going to make you go crazy, it's going to cause people to act in ways that we wouldn't consider proper, and the fact of the matter is, it's the exact opposite of that. The people that use hemp